Thank you very much. I mean, I'm very glad to see you all here. I guess a few have a bit of a hangover, but all props to you to coming here. I was afraid it would be like an empty seat here, but glad to see so many. Welcome.
Right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about VMware vSphere, but what is VMware vSphere? So for the sake of this presentation, vSphere is vCenter Server plus ESXi, right? So vCenter Server, that's the management server, manages all the ESXi hosts, all the virtual machines, settings, data stores, networks, everything. Well, this is where most admins spend most of their time with their web browser, admin tools, and so on. And then we have the ESXi host. That's the operating system that runs on the physical hardware, and in ESXi, the virtual machines run. All right? So the admins can go to either of these, so can the attackers. So vCenter Server is a Linux appliance. So if you know Linux, you'll recognize what this is. So when you do forensics, there is the kind of Linux part of it, and then there is the vCenter application part of it. Then we have ESXi, and that is not Linux. Everybody agrees? It's sort of not Linux. It looks like Linux, it's built kind of like Linux, but still not. So some very important differences is that, for example, you cannot run any kind of EDR or anti-malware inside ESXi. All right? So we have to rely on logging over syslog, so we send out the logs, we analyze the logs somewhere else, and we do the alerting there. And then we don't have kind of, the response or isolate capabilities that we have in regular EDR, as we do in Windows or Linux. Also, these logs are kind of debug level, so if you have tried sending logs from vSphere, from ESXi and vCenter, you'll know that there are a lot of logs. It's looking for a needle in a haystack when you analyze those logs. Now, I've had this bullet for long when we've done this presentation. Now I've added this little asterisk here that says we can't run EDR, because now VMware has a list of third-party vendors that are allowed to run stuff inside ESXi. And now there is one security vendor that can run inside ESXi and provide like MFA for SSH and some kind of anti-malware-like functionality. So yeah, this is changing and hopefully for the better. Another big difference between ESXi and Linux is that ESXi is purpose-built. It has one purpose, and that is to run virtual machines. So we don't need to run any third-party code almost inside ESXi. So most of the stuff that runs is the hardware vendors, tools, and such, but we don't need to allow anything else to run. So ESXi is the perfect appliance to do whitelisting, right? Also, the file system gets rebuilt from scratch every time you reboot, so it's more difficult for an attacker to get persistence in ESXi, and we'll get back to the details on that. So, regarding not being able to run non-digitally signed stuff, this makes it really easy to block ransomware, for example. So all we need to do to block ransomware on ESXi is enable a setting called exec installed only. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. So flip that to true, they won't be able to run their ransomware. Easy, right? So, Nicklas.
Yes. So actually here I have Akira, which I've made executable inside an ESXi. And I tried to run it. And as Anders said, if we turn this on, I can't run the malicious code.
Great.
Very great. What do you think? End of session. Shortest session of the first. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Or is there an or? What do you guess? Yes, there is.
We have 26 minutes left, so I hope there is some way to circumvent this. And unfortunately, there is. So I'm going to try to pause here. So what you see here that Nicklas did after, so you have the failed attempt first, it didn't work, and then we set this setting, exec install only, to 0. And once we do that, I'm going to continue here, so now the ransomware can run. There's a lot of error messages, but it still worked. So this is a real Akira sample. Don't try this at home. Nicklas is a professional. He does this stuff for a living.
I cheated a bit here. I recorded this one because running ransomware on the presentation computer. Yeah. There's like a little bit too much loose ends. But
bad idea. So this poor VM called DSL got encrypted, as you can see, and so on. So that was the fast intro. Now for the agenda. So we're going to talk about why you need to protect vSphere against attacks. We're going to talk about how these attacks actually happen in real life. And of course, we're going to talk about how you can protect yourself against these attacks. And spoiler alert, it's going to be about the proactive stuff plus the reactive stuff. So architecture, operations, hardening, and all of that, plus logging. That's the key to protecting these environments. And then there will be time for Q&A at the end. If you can't catch us here, come talk to us after the session. I'll be here until lunch today. Nicklas is here all week.
I have a bunch of sticker hairs as well, so please come forward and get some.
Or send questions on LinkedIn. That's fine as well. So, attacks. So vSphere is an attractive ransomware target, has been since we started doing this presentation in 2021. So all of these clips are from 2021. These attacks have been just continuing. Remember MGM, that was a big one. They have kept coming. And what we see now is also a lot of industrial ICS OT environments are getting hit as well, because they often run ESXi as their hypervisor to run the IT OT workloads. Right? But it's not all about ransomware. So we also have state-sponsored attacks. States might even burn a 0-day to get into some particular environments if it's interesting enough. We have MITRE, the organization, they got hit, did a great write-up on how this happened. We have Signia wrote a good blog post about how attackers are now hiding inside ESXi hosts and launching attacks over SSH tunnels from the ESXi hosts. And why are they hiding in ESXi? Well, because we don't have any protection, right? Very few environments have good monitoring and logging and detection capabilities in ESXi. It's the perfect place to hide. But we're not here to scare you and do all the doom and gloom stuff. You can protect yourself against these attacks, and we'll get to that. So how do we know how to do this? Well, we do incident response. Me and Nicklas have done like 50-something incident response cases with VMware environments involved. And we know what these organizations that unfortunately do get hit, what they do wrong, right? And very often, they don't have any good proactive security. If they had done their homework, done the architecture, operations, hardening, and all of that, they would have had a lot less risk of getting hit. Like not zero, but a lot less. Also, these organizations often do not have good monitoring in place. Same thing there. If they had had that, it would have been a lot lower risk. So where do you want to be in this very ugly Venn diagram? Well, here, of course. This is where you want to be. You want to have the proactive stuff done and the reactive stuff in place. So then you'll see the risk of getting hit is not zero, but a lot less, right? And this is what we're going to try to explain how to get there. So how do these attacks happen? Well, the end goal for the attacker, both in ransomware and the kind of persistent case, is to get into the ESXi hosts. So attacker wants to SSH into the ESXi host and be able to upload their ransomware into it, or their binary, or whatever they're using. So how do they get there? Well, the most common way to get in is through vCenter server, a management server, as I explained. So the attacker can go from an admin client or a server or whatever, attack the vCenter server directly, but then they need to have some kind of leaked credentials or stolen credentials or something. They can also go directly to the ESXi host, but same thing. They need either valid credentials or some unpatched vulnerability. And we have seen unpatched vulnerabilities being used in attacks, but it's not very common at all. So the most common way is that they've had this passwords.txt on the desktop. Unfortunately, yes, that happens. Or they pick up the credentials that were saved in the browser of the administrators or something like that. But the far most common case is that the customers use Active Directory to authenticate vCenter administrators. So they connect the vCenter server to Active Directory, they assign a bunch of groups or users, now these are admin users in vCenter server. And we know in the attacks, the attackers will always go for the Active Directory, of course, 100 different ways to get it, depending on what errors or mistakes the victim has made. And then they don't attack, they log in, right? And once you have logged in to vCenter server and you have an admin account, well, then you own the ESXi host. Whoops. Does anyone not agree? If I own your vCenter server, I also own your ESXi hosts, right? So I'm going to show you in a little demo here. So we have this.
Anders is actually going to do 3 live demos today. So
Yes, and also I am doing it on vSphere 9. And I created this demo yesterday. That's very wise, I think. So I have a vCenter server 9. I have an ESX host here, managed by it. This ESXi host is configured by the book. So, SSH is not running. We can even, enable this lockdown mode here, which means it's not allowed now to log in directly to the ESXi host because it's in lockdown mode. What I have forgotten as an administrator here is that there is an account called Anders. Now, pretend this is an Active Directory account. I don't have Active Directory in my lab, but pretend this is an AD group or AD user that has the administrator role on this host. So now I can, as an attacker, I can go in and change the password here, even if I don't know the password of the ESXi host beforehand. But I can't do it in the UI. There's no right-click change password here. You have to do it through the CLI or the API. So I'm connecting now as this pretend Active Directory user Anders to the vCenter server. I'm targeting this ESXi host. I'm starting this ESX CLI shell on it, which means I can now execute ESX CLI commands against this particular ESXi host. So I can do hostname get, I'm at the right host. So what I can do now is do ESX CLI system account set, and I can set a new password on the root account. So I don't need to know the old one. I can set a new one. And it says true down here, which means now it worked. But still, I can't get into the host because it doesn't have SSH started, right? But it doesn't matter because I'm an admin. I have the rights to start SSH. There, now it's done. But then I also have to exit the lockdown mode, which I can do because I'm an admin. And now I can SSH into this host using the new password that I set. Bam, now I'm in. So this is what most successful attacks look like. So, was this an attack? No, it was just me logging in because I had the credentials from AD. So the lesson here is don't connect your vCenter server to your general purpose Active Directory. This is not what it should be for. So these things should be hidden on the network. They shouldn't be reachable from regular client service, shouldn't be connected to the Active Directory, and so on. So other ways to attack. You can also join the ESXi hosts to Active Directory, and that's an even worse idea. Then the attacker can use AD accounts to log into the ESXi host. They don't need to change the passwords like I did. It used to be that when you joined an ESXi host to AD, there was a magical AD group called ESX admins, and if you created that group and put a user in it, it would automatically be an administrator in all your joined ESXi hosts. Terrible idea. Please don't do that. We also have other attack vectors now. How many of you know about VMware Cloud Foundation? Heard of it? That's the one that VMware is trying to push to all their customers now. It's kind of their big packaging. So you have vSphere in the middle, and then you have a lot of products around it, which is good, automation, protection for the VMs, and so on. But now you have this other manager, which is a manager of managers. So if you get to that one, now you get the password for vCenters and the ESXi hosts, so you can get in that way. Where do you put your vCenter backups? They contain a lot of good stuff that an attacker can use. For example, all the passwords for the service account that vCenter uses in ESXi. It's called VPX user, and it's stored in a table inside the vCenter server with the decryption key right next to it, so you can decrypt it. Then you can log in directly to the ESXi host using these VPX user. You don't need to use the root account. That's one way. So I'm just throwing out examples here on how the attackers can get in. We haven't seen those in real attacks, actually. What we have seen is the backup application having very high privileges on vCenter server. That's a great way in. We've seen threat actors use that. And even better, if the backup server is joined to the main Active Directory, it's even easier for the attacker to get in. So again, please don't do that either. Another way to get in is to use vulnerabilities in ESXi, the ones that are called VM escape. So you can go from a virtual machine, from the guest OS in a virtual machine to the ESXi host and execute code there. And there is one now that is still unpatched, I believe. They found it in May in this bug bounty conference. And I mean, they always find ways to get in when there is money at stake. So this one hasn't been patched. I expect a patch soon, I think. So then when you go from a VM, you can go to the hypervisor, and then you can attack other VMs. And these VMs might be isolated, right? There wasn't supposed to be a way to go from this VM to this VM. They're on different networks, highly isolated. This might be in an OT or industrial environment. Might be really important protected VM. So that's a way to get in as well. So you can't solve this by network segmentation. You have to have like different ESXi clusters for different things. So don't mix your high sensitivity ones with your like public facing ones, for example. All right, so these attacks almost always kind of follow the same flow. And I showed most of the steps on the left-hand side here. And once they have SSH, they start using their ransomware binary or whatever.
Yeah, so like one of the things, they need to enable SSH mainly for two reasons. One is to transfer the ransomware binary. There are other ways, but that's like 95% of the cases. And then depending how sort of, let's say, good with sort of big exclamation marks the ransomware is, they will enumerate and shut down the virtual machines, because encrypting a running virtual machine, you might break it, or there are other caveats to it. So usually they shut them down. As you saw in the first demo, then you make the ransomware executable, then you disable this sort of protection if it's ESXi 8 or higher, which is the runtime, and then you can execute the ransomware. So this is sort of the way, since remember, ESXi is kind of Linux, but not Linux. So these are the sort of the limited amount of commands you can use. So if we start looking a bit on the sort of the malware part of the ransomware itself, I have a couple of examples just to showcase this one. We start with a very easy one called ESXi ARGs that a couple of years ago roamed the internet. So it actually ransomware ESXi that was connected straight to the internet. You know, we were talking about what Anders said, having the ESXi facing internet. Anyone think that's a great idea because it's sort of easy to administrate? Oh,
hopefully not.
Hopefully not. I think if you had, you probably was met by this message from the ESXi ARGs. Though, looking at that, it has sort of a interesting feature. It actually contains two files, so which sort of makes it a good use case to analyze. These ones are open, so if you look at it. So it had a script that actually, yeah, it dropped the binary in the temp folder. Temp folders, that's the ransomware actors love to put stuff in the temp folder. Then it would enumerate all the VMs, and then it would iterate through all the VMDK files, which is like, that's the main target of the ransomware. And then it will send it to this encrypt executable, which will then execute sort of the ransomware on it, and sort of this is how it's the ransomware is done on a more high level. And then remove all the log files and start the SSH server. So this is kind of always how all ransomware binaries for ESXi works, more or less. Like it might be a little bit different for what kind of encryption key they are using. If you look at the, let's say, a little more advanced one, this is the case we did with ABIS Locker. So one of the things they do is because they want to target the VMDK files, that's the thing. And also they don't want to encrypt, so they want to encrypt the data, but it makes it so you can restore it. So they don't want to destroy them. That's why they just focus on one folder. And then one of the things they do is they look for the extensions. So when it got ransomware, it had .crypt. So it removes that. Also, it had its temp. So they don't want to re-encrypt themselves, which sort of defeats the purpose of the ransomware itself, but anything else. And then it was using these sort of built-in lol bins. Instead, they want to shut down the VM. So these, I would say, this is more like typically how they look like. Then they are like kind of using the ESXi stuff to shut them down before encryption. Remember, ESXi, was it Linux or not Linux? This is from this is from a case we did with, same ABS locker. From the command line, first you see dir. Dir, is that Linux or not Linux? It's Windows. ESXi, was it Windows? Anders?
No.
No, definitely not. And then, they start looking, then uname-a. So they don't actually know where am I. It's the kind of, is it a Linux stuff or they just start troubleshooting because the ransomware is not running. And then, okay, sudo.su. What's actually when you're in an ESXi, you are, Anders?
Yeah, automatically root. You don't need to sudo.
Actually, that doesn't work. So, and then they start, troubleshooting. It's like doing the LDD on the stuff. You see the slashes. They're like, yeah, Windows, Linux, still confused. And then uname comes again, and uname comes a third time. And then finally, they downloaded a second binary. And then they actually managed to ransomware the virtual machine. By showcasing this, this ransomware, they use the playbooks. They do a lot of mistakes, and also as a defender, that's what we can utilize. So they are definitely not, any like super hacking skills. Though the threat evolves, as I said, a few years ago, this stuff didn't exist. This is from a case we did last year, a new ransomware group that came up called SCADA 3301. We did a case with them where it was EXXI encryption, and this is from their ramp that tried to recruit affiliates. So we start looking at this, and in their recruitment say, yeah, our stuff works on ESXi. And I would say almost all ransomware actors now have the capability of looking at ransomware, have the capability of virtualization ransomware. So Anders, how do we protect ourselves?
Yeah, well, so we talked about the proactive architecture. I mentioned this setting called exec install only. Again, this is my favorite setting. It's a perfect setting, but unfortunately, as we showed in the demo, it can still be disabled, and that's a pity. So I've written a lot about exec install only. When you Googled it a couple of years ago, you used to get my picture. Nowadays, it's a more generic picture, but my blog posts still are up there, along with VMware's, but they mostly talk about how to enforce the setting, not the same thing as enabling it, and also how to deactivate it, because a lot of customers bump into this, like, oh, I want to run the third-party code. How do I disable this? So there are a couple of different variants of it. You have the boot kernel setting. It's been available forever, but it's not on by default. And that's what we're going to advise you to do. Flip this to true, right? Then there's the runtime setting. This only existed in ESXi 8. That's the one that we showed you in the beginning in the recorded demo, that we can just flip to 0 and then immediately execute the ransomware. Then we have something called enforcing it. I'm not even going to go into that. So runtime setting, as we explained here, you can just set it to 0. Your executable is going to run right after that, no waiting time. Then we have the boot kernel setting. And I'm going to continue my demo here now. So I was able to SH into the ESXi host. That also means I'm allowed to SCP stuff into it, or SFTP, whichever you want to use. I'm using the new password that I set. Now I've transferred my ransomware test file, which is just a shell script in this case. So now I can go in again using SSH. Hope I typed it correctly. CD temp. I have my binary there. And now I can run it. Oh, it says operation not permitted. Because exec install only is enabled by default, right? So all I have to do now is type this thing where I set it back to 0. But it doesn't work. And why doesn't it work? Well, because yesterday I switched my demo environment to vSphere 9. So now this kernel variant of the same setting, you see it has the same name, but you address it differently. This one is enabled by default. So unfortunately, as an attacker, I'm still allowed to disable it. Oops. Copied the wrong line here. Any day now. There we go. So now we disabled it, but I still can't run, because first I need to reboot the host. So it's still possible to disable it. It just takes a little longer. So now I need to reboot this ESXi host. It's going to start rebooting. I have to wait for it. Going to go on in the meantime. So great. Now you've bought yourself, what, 5-10 minutes, the time it takes to reboot a host. Is that enough time for you to detect that this is happening and be able to respond to it? 5-10 minutes is kind of a stretch, right? But at least it works a lot better. So this is what I showed you. Even though I disable it, I still cannot execute it until after the reboot. Then I can re-upload my ransomware as an attacker, because remember, file system gets rebuilt every reboot, and then I can execute it. And the threat actors know about this, right?
Yeah, we actually get hold of the ransomware playbook that sort of SCADA gives out to their affiliates. And if you look on the bottom row, it says the set kernel set in exec install only, how to turn that one off as well. So they have figured this one out as well. So
yeah. And they even do this without testing the execution first. They know they can just disable these and then try the ransomware, and then it's going to run after a while. We also have this thing called enforcement, when you use TPM to kind of seal the configuration against changes. And I wish that would have worked as well. That would have been a great thing to prevent me from disabling the setting that I just did. But, spoiler alert, it can also be disabled by the threat actor. So we have all these great things in place, but they can be disabled. So in vSphere 8, at least there is better logging here. So this is me trying to execute the ransomware or fake ransomware and failing. This is me turning off the setting. You get a long, angry warning message about it. It says you're going to get ransomware. And this is me succeeding in executing the file. So, but when you see the last message, it's already too late. Then the encryption is already running. But at least you can use this to kind of catch other types of attacks, or if you're really quick. So in vSphere 9, ESX9, note that they dropped the I in ESXi. Now it's called ESX9. The one that I used in my demo. So the boot kernel variant of exec install only is on by default, and that's why I failed, and that's why I have to reboot my host now. This might not be applied when you upgrade, so please do clean installs of version 9 when you get there, then you get this. Or just flip the setting yourself. So this is the way it looks now. You can ignore the bottom line. This runtime setting was just a parenthesis. It's not going to exist anymore. But what you need to do if you're running version 7 or 8, flip this one to true and reboot your host. At least you'll have slightly better protection, right? Next thing you can do to prevent it. Remember like 15 minutes ago when I said, if I own your vCenter server, I also own your ESXi hosts, right? Turns out that's not really true, because in 8, they added this capability to prevent VPX user from changing other users' passwords. And you do this by getting something called shell access. There's a setting or an attribute on every local account called shell access. If you remove this shell access, they cannot use that account to either get a shell, but also not modify other user accounts. So remove shell settings, then it won't be, whoops, I'm spoiling it here now. So let's see if my ESXi host has, whoops, rebooted yet. So I have to go back, and hopefully this will work. Yeah, so I turned on, whoops, I'm not going to have time for this demo. 1 minute left. So what I was going to do when I got in, I was going to set VPX user to false, and then I will not be able to change the password using the same trick that I did in the beginning. It's going to fail, right? Unfortunately, there is a way to circumvent this as well. And I found this, I reported this to VMware Security Response. They got back to me and said, yeah, this is not a bug, it's a feature. So you can use something called host profiles to set the root passwords instead. And now they added it. Instead of giving me a CVE, they wrote it in the documentation. So now it says, yes, you can circumvent this. You can also circumvent it by joining the ESXi host AD, as I showed you. Then you don't need to change any passwords. Quick next tip. Third thing you should do is enable UEFI secure boot on all your ESXi hosts. Then you're going to protect against a lot of backdoor persistent stuff. And we're running out of time, so we're going to go to the very last part. Do your logging. You can detect these things, but you need to be quick and able to respond to them as well. Don't forget about the obfuscation in the command line. Don't just look for command lines, look for the output. And be nice to your analysts, build context, help them figure out what's been going on in the ESXi host when you get an alert. We're out of time, and I love VMware security. So does VMware. Unfortunately, they talk more about protecting the VMs using products, and we talk about protecting the actual vSphere core of the product. So, in summary, ESXi is not Linux. Lots of great protections, as we showed, but they can unfortunately be circumvented, except secure boot. So do security architecture and do the logging as well. You're being a great place to protect your environments, and you'll be the king or queen of your networks. Before we go to the Q&A, we just want to say thank you very much for coming to our session. Hope you got something good out of it. All right. Who's got the first question?
I have a bunch of Truesec stickers here, so come up to us afterwards as well, and you get one.
Not everyone at the same time, please. Okay, we have some extra material. So we have a scenario here. So you have been ransomware. So now it's Saturday. You are down here on the timeline. On Friday evening, you got your VMware environment encrypted, right? So the incident response team will work together with you, determine that the encryption happened at Friday evening at 8 o'clock, right? And then you will work together to figure out, do you have intact backups that haven't been encrypted or deleted? Please protect your backups, also very important. And eventually, we will figure out, yes, you have backups, nightly backups, they work. We can restore them if we want to. We will also determine that, for example, AD got breached on Tuesday, the threat actor got in on Monday sometime. Now, out of all these nightly backups, which ones should we restore? So we have two choices, go for the Monday backup, that's before the threat actor got in, or the Friday morning backup, right? How many of you would go for the Monday backup?
Hands up.
Yeah, like majority, right? How many of you would go for the Friday backup?
And the third option is that to pay the ransomware, or the ones who didn't raise their hand?
Please don't do that. So, I mean, what we want to try to convey here is that, yes, it's safer to go for this backup, but 5 days. If you go to your business and say, hey, do you want to lose 5 days of data or 18 hours of data? I mean, 5 days is horrible. Just go to the finance department like, oh, by the way, everything that's gone in and out invoice-wise, you now need to kind of manually type in again. Or just all your emails that have come in and you've sent, you have to kind of, you've lost them now, you have to remember which ones you sent or not. It's a really bad idea. So always go for the last one before the encryption. What's the drawback of that? Well, of course, there's a threat actor in it, like hovering their finger on the encryption button. But that's why you do the cleaning in an isolated environment. Clean the stuff before you put it back. And that's why you do a lot of forensics, so you know what to clean. But if the underlying VMware environment is not clean, if that has been affected as well, where do you restore it to? You can't do clean VMs on a dirty VMware environment, so you have to clean that as well. How do you do that? How do you clean a vCenter server that's been breached or an ESXi host? I'm not saying there are easy answers, but this is stuff that is important to think about. And wouldn't it be better if the ESXi or the vSphere environment wasn't hit at all? Then you can just start restoring onto a clean environment, not having to kind of rebuild that first. It's going to save you lots and lots of time. So again, protect your VMware environments.
I mean, also just to add here, I know it's not a sales pitch, but me and Anders, we have put quite many hours into this research. So we have actually kind of figured out how to detect and actually do response as well to protect VMware. So
Yeah.
anyone interested in that kind of service, you have a VMware that, you have these services, please come talk to us later on.
Right, and now we're out of time for real. Thank you very much.
Thank you.